Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle.
And I'm the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
And of course, we were still doing our whole Sufi Roadshow thing, Airbnb zone. Love it. And yes, that's the truth of it. But we're making the most of this excellent internet service. So there's that. So thank you for joining us, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're here joining us live. We welcome you and we're very grateful that you're here. A little bit of a YouTube spiel, of course. If you're enjoying our content, let us know. Let us know by leaving a comment, by subscribing, perhaps, might be the best way.
Yes.
And of course, by liking. Yes, we do benefit a lot from knowing what videos are.
Yeah, you can help balance out all of the people who hate our videos.
We
Hit
have
the hate button.
We have some loyal haters.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so they're welcome to,
But you can help make them irrelevant.
Ideally, yes. So, any announcements?
Everything is changing.
Yeah, we're still
Yeah.
figuring out how to
Yeah,
move that
there will be
forward.
updates later.
Yes, this is year 5 of the Nine-Sided Circle, believe it or not.
Yeah, so it's time to get through our first shock point. Yeah.
But we're getting through it, and we look forward to sharing more about that process with all of you in due time.
So the changes are all exciting and thrilling and fun, and y'all are going to have a great time with them. And what more can be said?
Yeah,
More amazing stuff, more strange material, more chances to hang out with us. And what could be better than that?
hopefully you're not sick of us yet. You could be, but we're not sick of each other, so there's hope.
Yeah.
All right, let's move forward into the topic at hand, shall we?
All right, what's the topic on hand?
So we are kind of unfolding a bit of a series where we're talking about quote unquote secret techniques,
Yes,
right?
the secret stuff.
Yeah, and
this is not really secret. Nothing is really secret.
Right.
There has never ever been a secret, but people think that these things are secret. The first one we did was on the stop exercise.
Yes.
Yes. So this is a new one.
So this evening we are discussing the practice of noticing. And we all think we're noticing things all the time, but we're going to get very specific about what we mean when we say noticing, in making it a practice, a formal practice. And it's a great entry practice, which means it is a baby step into the process of the awake state, right?
Yes.
It's like the babyest baby step aside from like what, breath practice, fundamental breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good beginning practice that you can, I mean, I've been doing this since 1974. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I still do it.
So that could be a story unto itself.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't need to be, and we don't need to entertain people. We need to teach them how to do the practice. We'll entertain you later.
All right, we'll save the stories for later, but let's make the most of this hour that we're going to be sharing together. And tell us a little bit about noticing.
Okay. Noticing, I mean, it's such a mundane name. Noticing. But to notice something means something very specific. Did you happen to write down all of those definitions? That's okay. I can get them. They're right here.
Okay, good. I have the rest of it. But...
Yeah. We have the etymology of noticing. And
okay, so it's a word that goes back to early 15th century Middle English.
From the Old French, from the Latin.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of, that's for the origins of it. It can, We're using it as a verb here, notice, to notice.
And as a noun, both.
Yes.
And it gives the idea of that which is being known, knowledge, and it's a sense of formal information or warning even, to heed, regard, to cognicize. Is that a word?
Where's that?
There.
Cognizance.
Cognizance.
Heed, regard, cognizance.
Yes.
Yeah.
A sign giving information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all of those things. And this is very much like that. This is a formal practice that is going to give you information.
And words like awareness and attention often come to play in the definitions of this word. And of course, that seems completely natural to us, given how intrinsic attention and awareness are to the practice of noticing.
Yeah, so noticing is a formal attention practice. Oh.
James, did you have a thought? I just see that you're okay.
He muted himself.
Never mind.
Yeah. So, how do you do noticing? You might well ask. Should we tell them or should we make them wait?
We can tell them.
Okay. Basically, this is a sort of two-step process. The first step in the process is to choose something to notice. This is an exercise I do with my one poor Bagua student every time we have class, which is to ask her, what do you hear around you? Very simple. What do you hear around you? When she first started, it would be like, oh, I hear the crows.
We had very loud crows in the parking lot next to our place.
Yeah. We also have some pretty nice crows out at the park. So
yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the thing that she noticed. But then as she started paying more attention to her noticing, she would begin to hear other birds and different sounds around, somebody working in their garden with some sort of device, people walking by, people talking, all of these things that can be noticed. And then once you're really into your noticing, the second part of the process is, do you notice yourself noticing? Asking you to move into a phenomenological position in this. Finding yourself, which is just like the trick question, are you awake or asleep? Right? When you're noticing and somebody says, or you say to yourself, do I notice myself noticing? You wake up. You enter into an awake state. And that is the joy of this exercise. I like doing hearing a lot, listening, because ears are the first of your senses to open. Did you know that? Did you know that a baby's hearing is active before its vision is active? Before its sense of smell is active? The first sense that opens up in us is hearing. Whereas with a dog, the first sense that opens up is smell. For us, that's second. For us, the third sense to open up is sight. And I don't know where taste fits in there, but it's somewhere around the smell. So that's the advantage, I think, in using hearing, is because it is so hardwired into our brains in such a specific way that listening is, well, it used to be natural. It's not so natural anymore.
And of course, if hearing is not your strongest sense because of hearing impairment or whatever, visual works well too.
Yeah. Also, kinesthetic works really well.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 100 processes that people do, some of which we teach, involved in noticing your body. You know, Gurdjieff used to do a body scan exercise with his students on a regular basis. And it was, he had a specific pattern. I don't care what pattern you use. I don't think that one makes any difference over another, but you start in part of your body, and like you start in your feet, you know, right foot, left foot, and just notice your feet and notice any areas of tension in your feet. And as you're doing this, again, you ask yourself, am I noticing myself noticing? And then you continue noticing, working your way through your entire body. And periodically asking yourself, am I noticing myself noticing? So you get both the referential, which is the sensation of the body, and the reflexive, which is the noticing yourself. Make sense?
How's everyone doing so far? Thumbs up if you're good. Okay. Great.
Great. Did you just flip us off, James?
Yeah.
No, James just has really long thumbs. That's what it was.
Your digit problems aren't my digit. I can distinguish between this and that. They're two different things. Don't blame me.
All right. So you mentioned this sounds similar to self-observation, self-remembering, self-witnessing.
It is related to all three of those. It's a this is a gateway drug to self-remembering.
Okay. So this is kind of like the behind the scenes part.
Yeah, this is, you got to start somewhere, and you should start small, and you should start with something that you can easily succeed at. If you say to somebody, I want you to witness yourself, you know, I want you to remember yourself. You know, that's a weird instruction. If you say to somebody, I want you to feel any sensations you might have in your neck, anybody can do that. So noticing is a gateway drug.
So one word that comes to mind in learning about this is attunement.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it kind of literally is like turning a dial. You know, you're trying to hone in on something, whether that's a sound or a sensation, but you're kind of clearing away the noise or the static to clarify a specific thing. Do you feel like this is more of a letting in generally, or more of a specific direction of attention?
This is definitely a specific direction of attention, in that you are choosing what to notice.
Okay, so that is kind of what I think of.
Yeah. And ideally, you choose things to notice that you don't usually notice.
Okay.
Yeah. Like if you are a car mechanic, you don't choose the smell of oil to notice, because you're constantly smelling that.
So you're choosing something you're not habituated to.
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah, because habitual noticing is a real deal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have a particular job that requires that you notice something, like if you're a mechanic, you are going to notice things within the engine of a car that most of us won't. And it will be sights and it will be sounds. Sometimes there will be smells, but that gets scary. You know, it's like, what's burning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is starting fresh then. This is not something you've already trained into previously. This is something you're newly choosing, where you're like, I'm intentionally attuning to this. I'm intentionally familiarizing myself with this stimulus that is a bit out of my ordinary consciousness.
Yeah, so it's going to be today, I set the intention, I make the intention of hearing the songs of birds as I move around the town. And then every time I notice myself listening to the sound of a bird, and that's a form of waking up. You're just unconsciously moving along, and all of a sudden you go, oh, bird, bird, bird. And when you do, then you ask yourself, am I noticing myself noticing? And then you go back to just listening to the bird and noticing yourself listening to the bird. And this is basically building the framework for your self-observation, your self-remembering, and your self-witnessing.
Okay. So it's pretty tame then.
Yeah.
It's pretty gentle. You're not digging into your shit with
No,
this.
we don't care about your shit with this exercise. Keep your shit to yourself.
So this is not unpacking your stimulus response reactions to somebody telling you something that you find triggering or anything like that. This is just ordinary, everyday, value neutral.
And it can be just about anything.
Yeah.
Today, I am going to notice every time I hear a car honk its horn. And then once you do that, you're kind of primed to it. It's like, until I mentioned this, you did not notice the sensation in your left foot. Now you notice the sensation in your left foot. And you're going to continue to notice that for the rest of the talk. Your mind is going to keep coming back to it and go, oh, my left foot. Even if you don't have a left foot, you'll notice. Trust me on this. So does this make sense so far? Simple exercise, very, very simple. But from simple things, we build wonderful vistas. Yeah. All of these beautiful 3D renderings that you see, they're all built from things called primitives. That's like a sphere, a cone, a cube, a cylinder. Those are primitives. And when you look at these wonderful cityscapes or beautiful forests that are rendered in 3D software, they're all just made up of that shit. And this is the same as that. We are working with primitives right now, and from this we are going to build an amazing practice. So there.
So there.
Yeah.
So the benefit of this then is building that sense of that baseline of skill.
Yeah.
That baseline of sensitivity.
Yeah, to consciously notice.
To subtleties or to just things that show up and give you that burst of, oh, my attention has just been sparked.
Yeah.
And that helps you just have like a basic framework for things that may come along that are deeper and more complex.
Yeah, and things will come along that are deeper and more complex because this is a foundational practice.
Right. So I see that Osama has a hand up.
Osama, ¿qué pasa?
Yes. Hello. A question. So you mentioned, so let's say I start with this intention. Today, I set the intention to notice the sounds of birds throughout the day. It seems like the moment I notice the sound, the notice of me noticing is also right there.
It's a trick. It's a trick. We're tricking you into being awake.
Okay. Yeah.
That's 3/4 of teaching this stuff is tricks. You know, it's like, look at this. It's gone. Yeah, it's like that.
So, I mean, people think that waking up is more complicated than this, but really,
Waking up is not more complicated than this. It's the easiest, the simplest, not easiest, but the simplest thing in the world. Being awake is the simplest thing in the world. And we have said this numerous times in various different ways. Y'all remember our "Are you awake or asleep?" practice, right? The moment you ask yourself that, you wake up. It's a trick.
so there is something to be said about the intentionality of this. And we've kind of touched on that already, and Osama, so did you. But yeah, I think one thing that I, coming to this concept for the first time, struggled to understand was the difference between picking up on things in the environment that just kind of impinge themselves on your awareness uninvited, and this sense of intentionality towards, I'm going to be open to perceiving this thing. And that's where there's this sense of being aware of being aware.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an important component to this, an important point of clarification. Yeah. So is there any sense in which this would be too much for the sake of argument? Like, is there any point at which this is like, oh, I should not do this? Or
Yeah, if we tell you don't do it, first of all. If you are an obsessive compulsive personality, you need some coaching. One of those. Do not try this at home, kids. But that's a rare danger. Because there is a natural inclination for you to go back to sleep. And you will be tired after a while of doing this. You will wear yourself out because you don't have enough energy to do this for a great length of time.
And as we've said time and time again, attending to things in the environment, all of that stuff, that takes energy to do.
Yeah.
So eventually you will have expended that energy.
Probably our next secret technique is going to be how to raise your energy levels.
Okay, we'll talk about that. I'll bookmark that.
Yeah, bookmark that. Yes.
Jonathan, I see that you were unmuted and had your hand up.
So with that exercise, let's say I've set that exercise for myself, or it was given to me. And then I happen to be walking out on the street and I notice a bird singing. And then that tells me, then because of that, I remember, oh, that's right. That was the exercise I was given. That's one way it could happen.
That's one way.
And maybe that's the correct way, maybe that, but
No,
what if I was again walking out on the street and then I remember, oh, there was an exercise I was given. What was it? Oh yes, I was to try and listen to be aware of the sounds of birds. So then I start to try and listen, and maybe there aren't any birds there, or maybe there are.
There is always birds.
Is that just another potential benefit outcome, or does that mean I should change the exercise because I'm ahead of the game because I'm listening now? I've already got my attention.
Both ways to start doing the exercise. When I do it now, I choose what I say. I choose to notice the sounds of birds. I walk out the door and I'm already constantly scanning for the sounds of birds. My awareness is focused on that. So I've created a second attention, as they say. that is focused on my hearing and listening to my environment. And I don't exclude anything from the sounds of the environment, but I specifically ping off the birds. That's a more advanced method of doing this, but like I said, I've been doing this since 1974.
So yeah, I mean, Jonathan
Yeah,
is
so
also talking about being like,
yeah, you're walking
triggered
down
into
this. Yeah,
remembering
you're
the
walking
activity.
down the street, and something triggers you into remembering to do the practice. That's what's going to happen to start. One of the two ways that you described, but after you hear that bird, you're going to be listening for birds for a while. It's going to help you maintain an awake state for a little bit, and then you're going to go back to sleep, and then the birds are going to go chirp, and then you're going to go, oh.
Did that answer your question? Great. Excellent.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Did it make sense? I mean, I can answer
Yeah.
your question and it would
It
be
made
totally,
perfect sense.
yeah. Sure.
Yay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Nancy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about whether part of the thing is being neutral about what you perceive.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you don't have to be neutral.
Yeah, for me, that's more like for an entry level beginner or just a chill practice that doesn't have too much, gravitas or whatever to it. Neutral stimuli are probably a good exercise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And some birds have very beautiful songs, so you can enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more in general of, is it important to, I guess, not get caught up in whether what you're perceiving is good or bad?
Yes.
Yeah, that
would
doesn't
say
really empty.
that. Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely a practice in which there is a deliberate effort made not to dive into analysis, judgment, story making. It's kind of like that's
It's
irrelevant.
Yeah, that's why it's called noticing. This is not storytelling. It's just noticing. I mean, if you're in Bodega Bay and all of a sudden you hear the screeching of 1,000,000 seagulls coming at you, you might want to worry. For those of you who don't get the reference, that's where the birds were filmed. Was
Oh
in the
my
town of
gosh.
Bodega.
I saw that on a sick day at home in middle school.
It
Terrifying.
terrified you. Yeah. I'll take you out to lunch at Bodega sometime.
How romantic.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a beautiful little town.
So does that give some clarity, Nancy?
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent. Good. And Chris has some thoughts or questions.
Yes. Or maybe not.
It's actually Josh.
Josh, yes, please.
Hi. So this is very similar to a practice I've been doing for a long time of kind of waking up senses and noticing hearing and cycling through all the senses. And I really love this added part that you're giving me of noticing the noticing. And even just trying it here in it as you're speaking of it and trying that out, what I'm finding is, okay, I can notice myself noticing. To me, it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm all that much awake. It doesn't necessarily feel like I'm really, now I'm awake, whereas before I was asleep. It feels like my attention, I've got a different kind of attention than I had 5 minutes ago. But qualitatively, it doesn't feel all that different. I'm just paying attention to the fact that I'm awake. So the fact that I'm noticing my
It doesn't have to be that much different. There is no hosannas going to be sung because you do this. You're going to do it and you go, oh, I'm awake. That's what you want, is just, oh, I'm awake. Nothing like, oh my God, I'm awake. I'm having a cosmic consciousness experience. None of that.
Yeah, this is called the fundamental stuff for
a reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's important not to have the kind of experience that will distract you from getting out of traffic when you're walking down the street.
I see Josh nodding emphatically. Yes. Yeah. So let's say, because I did think it was important to talk about what can, not what can go wrong, because not too much can go wrong with this practice. It's so fun.
You could go completely insane. You could be barking at the moon for the rest of your life if you do this wrong.
Legit? No. Who knows?
I mean,
Yeah.
anything is possible. The thing that you have to realize is that human ego can be wired in so many different ways that anything weird can happen.
Mhm.
You can say to somebody, think of your happy place, and they burst into tears and they're sobbing miserably, and you can tell that they're in pain, right? That's not what you asked for. You asked for their happy place, and yet they go there. And that's why I say, if you're super obsessive compulsive, if it's at the point where that's a disorder for you and you're taking drugs for it, don't do this exercise.
Seek guidance.
Seek guidance,
Yeah.
yes. Do the remedial work, then come talk to us.
That is something we are always stressing. Yes. And we've done talks about that. Which maybe we should link to.
Every now and again, we get messages that say something like, I am in incredible pain in my body. Can you help me? And always the first question I ask is, have you seen a doctor? Because that's where you start. You don't go to some whatever it is that we are to get advice on how to not hurt. You go to the doctor first. Because who knows what's going wrong.
Okay, so let's say you're doing this, well, too much. We kind of talked to you and I about, like, if you're doing this practice too much, what do you do?
If you're doing this practice too much, you will fall asleep.
You will wear yourself out.
You will wear yourself out. You will use up the amount of conscious energy you have to do this kind of work, and you will fall asleep. And there's lots of accounts of this very thing. Ouspensky used to talk about this, how he'd start out remembering himself, and then 2 hours later, he would literally wake up and realize that he had been operating purely mechanically for the last 2 hours with no remembrance of himself. And we have all had this experience.
Like, we've sat down, we're made the commitment, we're going to do this thing, whatever the practice might be. And then we realize, shit, where have I been for the past 45 minutes?
Or you're driving down the road, down the freeway, you're going from one town to another, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I was asleep for the last 5 miles. That's a common one.
So I guess that's why maybe next week is a good time to talk about energy, because
okay, I was going to spread these out a little bit more, but I think you're right.
Because as I've talked about with other students, if you don't have the capacity in reserve to do a practice, you're running on empty already, and you're really perhaps expecting too much from yourself.
Yeah, and when we say energy, we don't mean anything mystical by that. We mean it by the most literal definition, which is energy is the capacity to do work. That's the definition of energy.
So it is as boring as, are you eating, sleeping, resting,
breathing
enough?
Yes, and a few other things. I mean, there is more esoteric things you can do to increase your energy, and of course you have different kinds of energy, some of which are better for work than others. But and we've said this before, and I'm going to say it again because I like saying it. You notice how it's really hard to change anything in yourself? This is because in order to make a significant change within yourself, to change a habit, to change a behavior, anything like that, your energy must be above a certain threshold. And your ego is designed to keep your energy below that threshold. So if you want to change, you have to know how to raise the intensity, quality, amount, however you want to say it, of your energy to do work.
So we'll be revisiting that
Yes.
in a talk coming up soon.
And it will be heavy. And it'll probably be next week, because why not?
Okay.
I've got a whole list of topics. And that one is actually funner than what I was thinking of. So
Fun is good.
fun is good.
We need more fun.
You definitely need more fun.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions or even ideas for things that you might like to set an intention of noticing in your own day-to-day life in the next, let's say, week?
Yeah,
I think that would be an interesting thing
pick
to
one,
share.
and there
about.
will be
Yeah.
a test. And if you don't want to pick one, we'll give you one.
Like one I thought about was like, let's say you take a daily walk around the neighborhood. What kind of shoes are the people wearing that you encounter on your walk? Taking notice of that.
Yeah, I do one like that, but it's what are the sounds their feet make when they walk?
Ah, yeah,
That one for me is really, really good.
cool. Anybody else?
I'm gonna try the AC hum, and
Love
we'll see how it goes, because that's happening a lot these days.
Yeah,
I like that one. Nancy, how about you?
Oh, you just reminded me that I heard the sounds that my feet were making, which was an
That's all
unusual experience.
yeah,
Yes. That is a good one.
yeah. I actually listen to the sounds of my own feet every day because it
Same.
tells me how I'm walking.
Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah,
That's what I do because I can't necessarily hear it, but I can feel the quality of my steps day to day.
yep. And it's a good thing to do.
Mhm. Oh, who do we have?
Craig Gray, God, I haven't seen him since forever.
It's kind of towards the
Yeah,
end.
it is towards the end, but it is always nice to see him. So,
Who else might have an idea they might like to share? For things that you could take time to deliberately notice over the next week.
Friend of mine who is very tuned into hips is always asking, where are your hips? You're kind of carrying your tail high, you tucking in like with his tail between his legs. Where are your hips at? And there's something really neat about noticing where your hips are, how you're carrying your tail.
Yes, I think that's great. Is Cherie there? Curious about what Cherie might be thinking about.
Cherie is here.
There she is.
Yeah, I look different because I'm in a different part of the house and I've just done 2 hours of landscaping and then an hour of tennis singles. So, a bit hot and bothered there. This morning, I noticed there was a different sound outside and I realized my neighbor had employed a landscaper to prune her garden. So there was a different sound. So we went to investigate what this person was doing, and he had decapitated a beautiful tree because he was told that this neighbor had wanted sunlight. And I said, I feel very sad because I've been nurturing that tree since 2016.
Oh,
And
no.
You have to do this to bring this tree down and it will grow back. But meanwhile, it's literally all the branches are up like this and they're literally been cut off like that. Instead of leaving a few branches up. And what I noticed was my deep irritation to this person. So I'm wondering about not just the senses, but I heard the sound and I saw what was happening. And then I thought, what is this man actually trying to achieve? And so I thought, okay, The noticing was, this man has a job. And this is a noticing of his deeper sleepness was, he said, I'm only doing my job. I'm only doing what I'm told. And I thought, wow, you haven't actually thought about how you're cutting or pruning. So I said, I prune Japanese style, because that's what we do here on this landscape nursery, is Japanese gardens. And so this was the antithesis of a Japanese garden. So I started to talk about, is it possible to do this and leave this tree and do this and that? And as I started to talk to him, I made friends with him. And I said, well, I think you're right. I think this has got to happen. This has got to happen. So using that noticing, we were looking at elbows on trees. So there's another thing you look at, is how things are shaped and where you would cut them. So instead of cutting, say, off at the joint there, you would cut down here, and then it would also, try not to make a rude gesture.
How would you have that today?
That was just a bit of a slip there. But if you leave, say, 2 up and you take the middle one out and you think that looks nicer, there's more light, all those kinds of things. So in going outside and noticing plants and how they choose to go in different directions, and where the flowers are coming from, and you notice the nodes, you notice water shoots that need to be nipped off. It's really enjoyable. And I've made friends with that man. His name's Martin. And he offered to do some seriously big pruning for me, because I offered him a tripod ladder to use. And it was that whole interaction of the practice can actually lead you into this relationship. This is what we're doing. Dealing with humans is the hardest thing in the world. And to get that cooperation. And then I made him a cup of tea, and I made him gave him a biscuit, and then I've given him a second cup of tea, and he can't do enough for me. And I'm thinking, oh, that was very unexpected, but we've created something beautiful. And I noticed in myself that irritation. I thought, how can I transform that into something else? So I kept saying to him every time I popped out, are you creating something beautiful? Something beautiful? What beautiful thing have you done? And that changed his whole persona. So the noticing of the language I used, noticing the plants, noticing the sky, noticing the light, how it changed in the garden, and that appreciation. That man now tells me that he's a university level horticulturalist, and he has not been appreciated by the people who employ him. He's not been appreciated for the things he knows. His hobby is orchids, and he has 150 beautiful orchids.
Wow.
And that got me thinking about, wow, that's amazing. You know, that's creating beauty somewhere. And I thought, wow, this topic about noticing, not just smell, not just the senses, but then using it to transform a relationship with a person who I could have got really, really angry and annoyed. And I thought, that's not going to work. That's not going to start my day well, because this was at 7 a.m. in the morning. And you think, what can I do to transform that? So then my noticing was all of those things, using my senses, and then realizing that this person was never noticed, never appreciated. And I thought, far out. This man is actually a really decent human being. And once you can get to that point, that can transform a lot of the interactions you have in your day, that people are waiting to be noticed and appreciated. And we can just say, shift that whole experience. And that was my day today. So that's what I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I think that while we are talking about something that is probably far more basic than that today, that gives us an upshot view of what becomes possible when we take time to build this skill set. And so thank you for sharing, Cherie, because I think that noticing allows so many doors to open if we are paying attention. And it's good for us to keep that in mind. So thank you. Anybody else? I think that we intended to keep this week kind of short because we've been up to a lot. And speaking of energy saving, we have to do that for ourselves too.
Yeah.
So if no one else has anything specific they might like to share, then I guess we can
Go to Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch mode. Yeah.
There we go.
All right, cool. Yeah, so sorry to rush off, Craig. It was great to have you pop in. I'm sorry we didn't get to spend much time with you, but it's been lovely to spend this hour with the rest of you. And I hope you'll find things that are worth giving that energy to notice
And
this
remember,
week.
there's going to be a test.
1 week from now, there's going to be a test.
Or
Yes.
before, you never know when the test is going to show up.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. So we can wave to each other and wave to everybody watching on the replay.
And we will see you next week.
We'll see you next week.